Okay, my iPad says it's 8 o'clock. I'll call the meeting of the Madison Metropolitan Sewerage District to order. Welcome to any of our guests. We do have 3 commissioners participating virtually. That they're Commissioners Lytle, Murphy, and Meyer, and then the other 6 are in person in the room. Let's see, virtual meeting guidance, Cassie.
Good morning, Commissioners, members of the public, and staff. To help us have a smooth meeting, I'm going to review just a few decorum rules for all. While the Commission and staff are in person, we are still offering a Zoom option so members of the public can attend. If you're attending virtually and would like to speak, you can do so during appearances by the public. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded and streamed live on YouTube, and the public chat has been disabled, but you can still send messages to the host if need be. Finally, Commissioners, please ensure your microphones are on while speaking and make sure that your voice is directed towards the mic. When you're not speaking, please ensure your mic is turned off so others can utilize the mics. As a reminder, only 3 of the table mics can be alive at a time. Also, please state your name before speaking for those who may be joining us via Zoom. Those are the decorum rules of the District Commission. Thank you for following them, and let's have a great meeting.
Okay, thank you. Any announcements? No announcements. Okay. Any appearances by the public? Seeing none, we'll move on. What I'd like to try to do is get the meeting wrapped up before 10 a.m. today. I know Greg has to leave and others have some other obligations, so everybody be aware of that. Presentations. Consent calendar, we have the meeting minutes of July 17th and the approval of cash statement operating fund. Any questions? Do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I'll make that motion, Tom. Commissioner Clark.
Motion by Commissioner Clark, second by Commissioner Bookland to approve the consent calendar. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Any more ayes? And any opposed? None. Motion carries. Okay. That takes us to capital projects update. Lisa?
Good morning, Commissioners. Let's see. Okay, I'm Lisa Coleman. I'm here to do the capital projects update. I'm the Director of Engineering. Here's what I'm planning to talk about. Using kind of the same format from the last several updates that sort of map out how the same way that the 2025 CIP is mapped out. I'll try to be brief today, as I know there's another 2026 CIP topic coming up that Todd and Jen have, so I don't want you CIP'd out for that. So I'm going to go through the projects that are either in planning, in design, or in construction, and then I'm going to talk about projects completed and bids received to date so far in 2025. Then I'll briefly touch on a couple project updates. I did want to call your attention to one new thing in your packet. So you had asked for reporting on budget and schedule with regard to the CIP. So we created a short budget and schedule report. It's included in your packet in the report section, looks like this. I'm not going to plan to go through that in detail, but I just wanted you to know it's in there, and we'll plan to include that as an item whenever, or as a report whenever we do a capital project update. Okay, so starting with projects in planning, we have the projects listed here with the stoplight colors. As we've discussed before, at the treatment plant, we have 2 large facility plans underway, heat and power, which is on track to be completed this fall, and then the biosolids facility plan. I'm showing that one as yellow. We're a little behind schedule on that as we just kicked it off in late spring. And then onto the interceptor projects, 3 of those are lining projects that we hope to begin later this year. One of the interceptor projects, the West Interceptor on Region, is essentially just kind of waiting to be coordinated at some point with the City of Madison project whenever it occurs. And then lastly on the sheet for pumping stations and force mains, we have the crosstown force main air release saddle tap replacement, which we anticipate starting in fourth quarter of this year. All right. Next up is design. So again, the stoplight colors are kind of indicative of how it's going. At the treatment plant, we've got liquid processing phase 2, which is on track. We are currently reviewing 30% drawings for that. I talked about the Lagoon Dike Improvement Project at my last update. We're on track to bid that early next year. For dryer and seating, we're a little behind schedule, but you should see an item selecting a consultant for that at the first meeting in August. So watch for that. For W4, we are at 95%, so we should be bidding that probably this fall, September-ish. For the interceptors, we're in design for 4 projects. I'm showing the 9 Springs Valley improvements as yellow. We're a little behind where we thought we would be with that project, but we do have the route selected, and we do have our field work complete, and we're working on starting the real estate acquisition process for that. Remember, that's the project that will replace the pipe where we had to do the emergency repair last year, AKA some of you called it Theron's sinkhole, so that project. I did also want to update you on the final numbers for that emergency repair, as we've now received contractor invoicing for that. So the grand total there came to $1,550,000 was the grand total there. Okay, into construction projects. So here's a map with our current major construction projects. I've got 10 on the map shown here. So 3 projects are in blue down at the plant. Then there are 5 interceptor projects in purple, 1 up in Wanakee and Westport, 2 along University Avenue, 1 along Highway 51 south of the Beltline, and then 1 in the city and town of Verona. And then finally, we've got 2 pump station and force main projects. They're shown in teal. So pump station 17 down to the very far southwest. And then 1 newly into construction phase that's shown at pump station 10, which is up to the northeast off Milwaukee Street. So here's those same projects with the stoplight colors. And then remember, italics means that I've newly moved it into the next phase. So that means it just moved from design into construction. You can see a new one there at the bottom. At the treatment plant, starting at the top, we've got 3 projects underway. The sludge thickener, it's kind of a tongue twister. Drive replacement is yellow. That's been bid, but we're waiting on equipment arrival in November. The electrical service equipment replacement is yellow, as we've had some contractor permitting delays, but they're finally rolling again. They were in fact pouring concrete this morning on that one to start bringing the building up. The flow splitter here at the plant is on track. On to interceptors. There's a lot there, so I won't go into detail, but I want to mention just a couple things for them. For the Lower Badger Mill Creek Phase 6, we had anticipated completing the portion of that project along Shady Oak Lane before Labor Day in order to not interfere with the Ironman bike route. However, the contractor wasn't able to get the manholes in time, so instead they've elected to wait to begin that pipe install until after the race so that we won't screw up Ironman. So we won't really get started on the pipe install for that until after Labor Day. So that's kind of the bad news. The good news, I wanted to mention the West Interceptor Shorewood Relief, Phase 3. You might recall that that has needed a great deal of coordination with regard to traffic control with the city and UW Hospital and Metro and seemingly thousands of others. So I'm happy to report that that has been going very well. The southbound Highland was open 6 days early, and now only the on-ramp to University is closed. We got great feedback from the hospital that things went okay for them, so that was great to hear. The top picture on the slide shows that project, and the picture is taken kind of along the off-ramp from Campus Drive, so you can see that wedged in there between Campus Drive and the railroad tracks. It's pretty tight quarters, so challenging build there. All right. On to pumping stations and force mains. As I noted earlier, the Pumping Station 10 force main project recently moved into the construction phase. It's currently out for bid, and we'll be getting bids back on the 5th of August. Then I can't resist telling you about the other construction pictures up there. So the one at the bottom left is an 84-inch T that we're putting in as part of the flow splitter project, and you can see Kaylin Hackelor-King, one of our project engineers, standing in there. So that's a pretty big pipe. And then to the lower right, that's at Pumping Station 17. So those are the guy up on the scaffolding is working on the pipe penetrations that go out to the utility vault where the two force mains will be basically connected and valved. So that project is well underway as well. Okay. Switching gears now to major projects completed to date in 2025. And then remember, italics means that it's newly added to the slide since my last update. So far this year, we've got 3 completed projects. We talked about the HVAC, the 2021 HVAC project in my last update. And then the other 2 projects listed here under pumping stations and force mains are now substantially complete. I've got some more information on those in a second in project highlights, so I'll talk more about that in a minute. And then on to bids this year. So again, this doesn't list all the maintenance type projects, but some of the major projects. So far this year, we've bid 2 projects totaling $4.3 million in new construction. And as I noted earlier, we'll be receiving bids soon for the Pump Station 10 work. All right. Lastly, on to a couple project highlights. So I wanted to highlight 2 of the projects that are now substantially complete. You should see the acceptance of work items coming through commission for those in the next couple of months. Okay, so the first project I wanted to talk about is Pumping Station 17 Force Main Relief Phase 2. So I recycled this older slide. You have seen this before in previous presentations, but I just wanted to review that in order to continue to serve the rapidly developing area around Pump Station 17 in Verona, we have been working on 3 things for a number of years. The first is completing the lower Badger Mill Creek interceptor. That's what brings flow into the pumping station. The second thing is the upgrades at Pumping Station 17 itself to handle those higher flows. And then the third is the Pumping Station 17 relief force main. So essentially constructing a second parallel force main to carry flow away from the station. So then you might also recall that the Pumping Station 17 relief force main has been built in 2 phases. So there was phase 1, that was completed in 2022, and now the second phase is substantially complete. So the scope of the second phase was to pick up at the west end where phase 1 left off, and that's west of Highway 151, and then continue up towards the northeast to Goose Lake, where the pipe ties into the Nine Springs Valley interceptor. So you can see the lower left slide kind of shows the route for phase 2. It was about 1,100 feet of pipe. It was through some challenging terrain. There was a lot of wetlands along the route. In fact, it was built over the course of 2 winters, mainly because of wetland permitting. You can see in the middle picture on the slide, there was access through some pretty wet areas. We had to use mats that you can see off to the right in the middle picture. There were multiple stream crossings. There were also bores below Highway 151 and PB, and also the Military Ridge trails. There was a lot of coordination with the county as it went through many of the county's lands. So overall, despite the challenging conditions, construction on this project, I would say, went extremely well. We had an excellent contractor, that was Minger Construction, on board. Currently, they're finishing up the punch list, and so the force main is all ready to go. It's just waiting on the upgrades for Pump Station 17 to be complete. And then in the top picture, I like to show an after picture. So that's the green wet pipe picture. When we're going through there, it's pretty messy and disruptive, and when we're done, it looks like that, and nobody even knows we're there. So. All right. The last project that I wanted to mention is the pumping station 4 rehabilitation, which is also substantially complete. This pumping station is located on John Nolan Drive, across from the Alliant Energy Center, adjacent to the Holiday Inn. So the before picture is kind of in the lower right, and the after picture is up top. So up top, you can see to the left of the station, there's some louvered fencing there for a new generator. There's new HVAC equipment up on the roof, and you can't really see it because it's screened by some panels because of the city's zoning requirements. You can also see a new fence off to the right that has some of MG&E's electrical equipment inside that was moved outside of the station so that we had more room inside for other equipment of ours. That project was constructed by JF Ahern, and the completion of the project was delayed about a year, mostly due to supply chain issues. That seems to be sort of the new normal for our projects that are kind of heavy equipment, mechanical and electrical equipment heavy sort of projects, unfortunately. All right, here's a couple more after pictures at Pumping Station 4. You can see the new pumps in the picture to the top right. The bottom pictures are the new air compressor and the electrical equipment inside the station. The top middle picture is the new generator that's outside. It's got a fancy wrap on it to make it look, blend in, again, due to the city's zoning requirements. That generator is a nice enhancement that gives us some resiliency in the event of a power failure at the station. And then up to the top left, it's a little thing, but to the top left, that's a new pipe connection that we installed with some valving inside the station. It basically allows us to bypass the force main if needed, but still use the pumps inside the station. So it's not, that in itself isn't an expensive thing, but it's a really challenging thing to build unless you're already doing a project and bypassing the station to get it installed. So we try to do those kind of enhancements with these projects when we have a chance to do them. And I will say we already used it earlier this year when we had the emergency valve replacement. So doing stuff like that really does help us out later when other things come up. So I believe with that, that's all I have for today. So
okay.
Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Lisa. Anybody have any questions? Oh, Greg.
This is Commissioner, yeah, of course, yeah. I can't help myself ask an engineering question on that last one, Lisa.
Yeah.
So so you use the pumps inside the station to like pump to a tanker or something like that?
Yep.
To pull it outside?
Yeah, so we were able to, when we had the emergency valve repair earlier this year, we were able to hook hose from that, and then we were actually able to pump into an air release valve into the force main further downstream of where our valve was.
Okay.
But you could pump into a tanker or something else, right? Yep. Or a different, bypass pipe or something like that. Yep.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
Commissioner Lytle?
Somebody has their hand up.
Commissioner Lytle.
Commissioner Lytle, have a question?
Thanks. This is great info, Lisa. I was curious how you interpret the capital project expenditure table in terms of 39% spent, roughly 50% of the way through the year. Obviously, you gave us some individual project updates with the stoplights, but we know that the spending for these projects isn't an even 1/12 every month. Too soon to project, but are there certain ones on here that you think might drag us well below the 90 to 100% at the end of the year?
That's a tough one to speak as aggregate. In general, as you noted, it's hard, especially construction spending is hard to exactly pinpoint how it's going to go down during the year. We kind of know, okay, construction is going to be during this time frame, but, it's hard to know. I'll give an example. Often for Clean Water Fund projects, contractors need to submit certified payrolls. We will not pay them unless they do that because it's a Clean Water Fund requirement. They may be totally done with the work, but we will not pay them because they haven't done their paperwork, so there can be lags with those kind of things. It's really hard to predict, will they be on top of their paperwork? Will they not be on top of their paperwork? It's not really in our control either, so, you know, I feel like my job is to keep the construction moving, but I can't really account for how the cash flow is always gonna go, so I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question or if Bill has further comments about that.
One comment, this is Bill Walker, Deputy Executive Director. You've identified the key limitation of reports like this. You'll see, I'm going to piggyback on Todd later and do a little bit of a finance preview. We, at the planning level, tend to use different metrics to assess overall spending. We tend to do total reviews and reserve balance reviews because the noise, so to speak, in the individual within-year spending makes it very difficult to get a handle on the big picture question you're asking. So you're correct. This is sort of a snapshot, but it's very hard to draw any overall conclusions for 2025 from this data. That's not really the intent of this report. We use other metrics to get at those issues.
I think you could also, you know, there's also a schedule report that's attached where I, you know, basically took the schedule from the CIP and then compared it against where I think, you know, where things are sitting. So the things that are yellow or red, you know, those, I guess I would say that's a clue that we might not, you know, spend everything we plan to spend this year because they're maybe going slower or something's going on with those projects. So it's hard to speak as an aggregate, but I tried to give you at least a snapshot of project by project there, what's going on. And I think the update that I'm trying to give too is sort of pointing out, okay, something's going on with this project. This may be going slower than we thought, or, you know, something like that. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, thanks, Lisa. Todd and Jen, up on the capital improvement plan overview.
Just me today, so. Todd Giebert, Capital Planning Manager, here to talk about the 2026 Draft Capital Improvements Plan. So Lisa provided a great intro to this item because so many of the projects she discussed are a critical piece of this plan as well. So I'll attempt to pick up where she left off, focusing more on future projects. And specifically, what I want to cover today is just a big picture view of 2026 spending, or the 2026 CIP, that is, how it compares to the 25 plan. Talk a little bit about new projects to the plan and things that were removed. Talk a little bit about future projects and highlight them. And then Bill will finish up with how we're going to finance the plan. So this slide compares the 25 CIP to the 2026 CIP, and I guess right off the top, I'd like to say that not a lot has changed in this plan. It should look very similar. We haven't added a whole lot or taken a whole lot away. Spending has increased for the 6 years from the 25 plan from about $290 million to $310 million, and that's chiefly because of the liquid processing improvements project. As you recall, the Commission approved in May of this year to increase that project cost by $16 million. So most of that difference is attributed to that project. The other thing to point out on this slide is the relative split in what I call project categories. So we have 4 categories of spending: the treatment plant, pumping stations, interceptors, and capital expenses. The proportion dedicated of spending dedicated to the plant has increased, as you can see, 61% to 65%. And the pumping stations are going down by about the same amount. That's mainly because in the past 20 years, we focused a lot on major station rehabs, and that work is kind of being completed now, and we have less of that in this 6-year plan. So we have added some new projects to the plan. The most notable ones are listed here. The biggest one is a remodel of our laboratory. And the item after this one, Mary Powers will be talking about lab operations, and she'll go into a little more detail on the needs and what's included in that project. There's also 2 interceptor projects, rehabilitations, that are new to the plan, and then a smaller maintenance project for some equipment replacement at our pump station 2. In total, in aggregate, they are about $9.2 million. So to offset that, offset costs and also staff resources, we look for some removals as well. They're listed here. The first, the monitoring stations. You may recall that last month, Jen Hurlbus provided an update on the IEI program and talked about this regional monitoring network that we had. So this item was supposed to provide permanent monitoring stations. We're still going to do that work. We just think we can do it with temporary meters that are less costly and also more flexible. So that item will no longer be a capital item. The next item, access to interceptors. Right now, we can only access we can't access 20% of our system just due to wetlands. Our facilities are in wetlands, other environmentally sensitive areas. So the intent of this item was to provide permanent access. Instead, we think we can provide access on a project-by-project basis through other means. Then the last item there, power generators. This is an effort to provide standby portable generation at all 18 of our pump stations. Right now, we only have it at 5, and do that over a 10 to 15-year period. This is a really great project. We'd love to do it, but right now we just have greater priorities, so we are putting this one on hold right now. I should point out, though, that we still meet all the applicable code requirements for backup power, so we're not losing anything by not doing this project right now. About 3 or 4 years ago, we started listing project drivers in the budget, the main project driver. So these are really broad categories, and they just list the primary driver for each project. But looking at total and how they break down, about 72% of our spending in this plan will be to address condition needs or aging infrastructure, to a lesser extent capacity. You see very little being spent on regulatory and no projects just for resilience, which is not ideal. We would love to be doing projects like the power generation project to increase our resilience, but right now the priority is on aging infrastructure. So getting into some of the specific projects a little bit, I'll start by the interceptor category. Past 20 years, we've really focused on other interceptor systems, like the West Interceptor System and Lower Badger Mill. They've had multiple phases over the last 20 years, but those projects are coming to a close now, and the focus will shift to the Nine Springs Valley Interceptor. You've heard a little bit about this project already. Phase 1 and Phase 2 are underway. It's a long project, about 30,000 feet from Pump Station 11, Pump Station 12. So we are well underway in those 2 phases. And then Phases 3 and 4, capacity is supposed to be reached sometime between 2030 and 2040 in those stretches. So we'll attempt to do some more flow monitoring and zero in on the time periods when those are needed, but it likely won't be for another 5 to 10 years before we start on those. Moving on to condition of the interceptor system, I always like to show this slide just as a reminder of the age of our system. Just showing pipe installed by decade. So you can see that about 70% of our system was installed prior to 1980. And given that some of these sewers have service lives of about 50 to 75 years, if you do the math, we really need to start to rehabilitate these sewers. So we had 7 projects in the 2025 CIP. Those 7 projects remain, and now we're adding 2 more to try to address this need. So the way we determine which interceptors to do, Jen Hurlbus might have presented this about a year ago as part of our facility plan overview. Basically, we do a risk assessment for our interceptor system. On the y-axis is the likelihood of failure based on TV inspections, and then the x-axis is a consequence of failure. So using those 2 together, we are able to define risk for each of these interceptor sections. And so the last time we updated this table, we found that there were 2 interceptor sections that we would like to rehabilitate before they get into the red zone there. So the first is the East Interceptor rehabilitation. It's located in the city of Monona on Bridge Road near our pumping station number 7. Most of the system through the city of Monona was rehabilitated or replaced actually in the mid-1980s and early 1990s due to a sewer collapse. But they left about 1,000 feet upstream of pump station 7. So that's the section we'd like to focus on now. And you see in the picture there, what I call the 1 o'clock position is steel starting to show through the pipe wall, which is a major concern because that's a structural deficiency that and especially given the location of this, it passes underneath the Yarra River, so, sewer collapse underneath the river would be, I don't want to talk about that one. So high consequence of failure, and given that need, we would really like to start this one, this year. So you will see in an upcoming meeting a request to add this to the 25 capital budget as well. The other project is located about 2 miles to the east. This is in McFarland on our southeast interceptor, basically between Sigilcow Road and the Beltline. This is a longer stretch, and it also is, pipe is not as old. You see, it was installed in 1987, but given the location of the sewer is the critical thing here. It's located immediately downstream of a force main. So force mains have a lot of hydrogen sulfide in them. When they discharge to a gravity sewer, they release that hydrogen sulfide. It gets converted to sulfuric acid, and then it eats the pipe. And that's what's going on here. So that is also part of this plan. That's our force main. That's pump station 9. So moving on to the pump station category, as I mentioned, a lot of our rehabilitations have been completed over the 20 years, so we're in pretty good shape. But one major one that hasn't been done yet is pump station 16 in the city of Middleton. It'll be starting in 2027. We also have a project to install bar screens at 4 of the stations that pump to the plant. That work is well underway. And then also, Lisa mentioned this one, project to repair a leak on our pumping station 10 force main. Then a related project to that is to inspect that force main once that leak is repaired. That's a type of project that we haven't done before. Inspecting force mains is difficult and costly, so this is kind of our first attempt at a major inspection program. And then the fact that we have done these rehabilitations allows us to get to more maintenance work. So you'll start to see maybe smaller projects to replace valves and other types of equipment throughout the system. So finishing with the treatment plant category, again, this is the largest category, and we've heard a lot about these 3 projects, over the last couple of years. The highest priority one, and the one that's further along, of course, is liquid processing. You know a lot about that one. Biosolids, as Lisa mentioned, that's the second priority. Facility planning did kick off this spring. It should be complete by June of next year, and hopefully it answers a lot of questions that we have right now. Right now, we have an allowance, I'll call it, of $45 million for any improvements that result from that plan, but we really don't know what those will be right now. They'll be on the lower end if we keep with our existing program and make capacity improvements. They could be on the higher end if we have to switch a process or a completely different direction. So hopefully we'll know a lot more in a year. And then the third priority is the heat and power plan, which the facility plan will be complete by the end of the year. And it has a lot of interdependencies with the biosolids. So it's possible that we could merge those 2 projects. We just don't know yet what that would look like. So this slide shows budgeted expenditures for the CIP, both for the 2026 plan and then looking back 4 years. And the intent of this is to show the relative importance and spending of those 2 projects I just mentioned, liquid processing and biosolids. They make up about 50% of our projected spending over the next 6 years. So they are really crucial to this plan. Then also you can note that on this slide that the blue, essentially in 2026 to 2031, is at levels similar to years prior. Then I'll conclude by talking a little bit about the report we just mentioned that's in your packet. Last year, when I was presenting the 2025 CIP, I mentioned 6 projects that would be crucial for us in spending in 2025, and this is just an update then of how we are faring on those 6 major projects. We had budgeted about $23.2 million this year, and spending so far through the first week in July is about $12.1 million. So these 6 are, I would say, right on track, and you can look at the other ones in the packet. So with that, I'll pause and take any questions anyone has.
Okay, anybody have any questions? Patrick?
Thanks. Hopefully this is a fairly straightforward one, but knowing me, maybe not. Just curious, and Todd, I don't know if it's fair to ask you this question. would you say we've incorporated some lessons learned over the last 3 to 4 years in terms of capital project execution in our selection process for these projects going forward? Obviously, infrastructure condition really drives a ton of it, but in terms of the way the projects are bundled or not bundled, the way we schedule things around the plant versus out in the system for staff time and availability. Can you comment at a high level on how this has maybe been tweaked based on some of the challenges we've experienced with capital execution?
Sure. So one thing, we always look at staff resources when we plan our projects. This year, what was a little different is we looked out a little farther than we normally would. So we looked out a good 3 years for staff availability and trying not to get too many projects. So at least for the next 3 years, we feel we have enough staff to manage these projects. I'd say that's the biggest thing that we did a little different this year.
Okay. Anybody else? I got one question. You mentioned the hydrogen sulfide. Is there anything you can do to limit that gas from occurring right after a?
Well, there are things you can do. You can add to the water. You can oxygenate. Basically, hydrogen sulfide forms when you have long detention times. So you can't do anything about that. The force main is as long as it is, and then low oxygen conditions. So you can oxygenate the force main, and that'll help. That's expensive. You're adding chemicals.
Okay, so
it's wastewater.
Not cost effective to do that.
Typically, it's not, and it's also a safety concern because those are now out in the collection system.
Okay, so it's better to realize you're going to have a failed force main earlier, so to speak.
Sometimes it comes down to that. We did look at this at Pump Station 16, a system to treat it, and it just got incredibly expensive.
There's no lining or something makes it less hazardous to the pipe?
There are coatings you can put, but again, they're expensive too to put them on ahead of time. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. And Mary Powers, Lab. Oh.
Apologies, this is not noted on the presentation, but I want to piggyback on this and give you some financial highlights and implications of what you've just seen. This is Bill Walker again. I'll be doing full detail on the budget in September when we introduce the 2026 budget, but some highlights for you today. And I'll go a little quickly because I'm touching on some of the things Todd has talked about. First, I really want to draw everyone's attention to two factors that are really critical to understanding our financial plan. The first of them is that in 2026, we are deliberately using excess reserves. Commission's new reserves policy is helpful to us here in letting us be precise in what our targets are. Two benefits of those is reserves that we are forecasting to have in 25 are allowing us to avoid general obligation bonding for two collection system projects, which scored low in clean water funding, are not going to be clean water funded. So that's useful. It's very good to avoid geo bonding if you can. Spoiler, we won't be able to avoid it for the entire 6 years. These excess reserves are also allowing us to limit service charges in 2026, as you will see. The other factor, which Todd has already mentioned, and I am hammering it home, 27 to 31 is an expensive period, averaging about $55 million a year in spending. Todd has already mentioned the two big drivers here, liquid process. That number there is just for those 5 years taken from our plan. It's not the total cost of that project. Also, biosolids. Todd said 45. I took 50 out of the model. I don't think that actually makes it. Todd's going to tell me why that's different.
I was referring to construction spending. You're right. It's Z50 if we consider the design cost.
Okay, there we go. So we're both right. So two factors. You're going to see those as I keep going. And this is, I think, striking to me. There are roughly 50 other projects. Those are adding up to about $138 million in that period. That is a lot of work. Two unusually large generational projects in that period. I'm giving you forecast information. Forecasts always change. It's useful to pay attention to what is most likely to change. I am, in a sense, forecasting what I will tell you in September. about the 26 budget, and we still don't know what the annual wage adjustment will be. So the numbers you're going to see may change based on that. I always like to note that if we get information about a capital project's costs now, we're going to do our best to incorporate that if there's still time. So there may be some changes there. I don't think it's likely. Longer term, you're getting the same themes again. Liquid processing project, we have some money in there, but we haven't bid it yet. What I hear from my engineering colleagues is that nowadays you can get surprised by higher bids. That may be possible on this one. We've talked already today about schedules changes. My impression in this world is schedule changes always go slower. Lisa talked about some factors that could do that. Todd mentioned how we're doing our best to anticipate those factors. It's still possible that we'll get surprised by some slowdowns. This is the same slide Todd just showed you in different colors. I'm making the same point again because it's so important. We're spending a lot of money between 27 and 31. Black bar is liquid processing. Green is biosolids. The other categories are the different, interceptor pump station, et cetera. If you add in operating and debt service, you get this as a spending forecast. The bottom bar is operating expenses. That grows very smoothly because it's basically just a trend forecast. We don't plan the operating budget because we don't have project information. Debt service, of course, is driven by what we know about borrowing. If you look very closely, you will see 2030, that middle bar, that whatever color that is, orangish, grows noticeably. I'll come back to that later. And then the gray is, again, the capital spending with those big jumps in 29 and 30. So what does that mean for service charges? In dollar terms, we are forecasting, we expect to need $62 million in service charges in 2026, growing as you see with that black line. I talked about potential changes to the forecast. That dotted orange line at the top is a rough estimate of what service charges would look like if we found that we had $20 million in additional spending over the period. The lower dashed orange line is the mirror image of that. What if we find that we spend $20 million less? So the higher one is my example again, what if liquid processing comes in more expensive? The other one is what if schedule changes slow us down? So I'm giving you a sense of the forecast range of how service charges might grow in dollars. Exact same information in terms of change from the prior year. The black bars are what we are forecasting. We're expecting to need $2.9 million more in 26 than we budgeted in 25, and you have the scenarios there. This is a little bit of snark, but it's also genuine. For reasons I don't quite understand, some people like to see this in terms of percentage changes. This is the percentage change graph. We are likely going to show up with a 4.9% service charge increase for 2026, growing as you see. Those ranges again. One of the challenges in understanding percentages is that percentages sort of magnify things in a confusing way. When you go back to, say, this, those ranges are very smooth. They're not very dramatic. Here in percentage terms, they look more dramatic. It's the exact same information presented in a different way. Here is 4.9. Commissioner Lytle, you asked earlier about how we think about underspending. I am on a continuing quest to steer commissioners away from using individual project schedules as a performance metric. Burn down rates and schedule integrity are great metrics for Lisa, the overall program. They're good metrics for project engineers for managing, but at the finance and planning level and a fortiori at the commission level, more aggregate metrics like this are useful. This is the Capital Projects Fund Reserve. The black line is the forecast closing balance for each year. Green is the plus or minus 10% of your new policy. Yellow, plus or minus 10 to 25. We are forecasting, it is a forecast because we are in the middle of 25, to end 2025 with excess reserves of about $9.5 million in the capital projects fund. I mentioned these reserves will help us avoid GO bonding. They will help us limit 26 service charges. The other thing to note here is that that balance is forecast/planned to drop in later years. We're in a high spending period. One of the advantages of having a flexible reserve policy is you can spend some things down. You can spend your balance down. And that's what we are currently planning to do with this forecast. Debt service fund. Again, your policy, we must have at least next year's spending. That's the red zone. The policy has a relatively narrow 10%. We have about we are forecasting ourselves to have about $7.5 million excess in 2025. Same exact story, avoiding GO, limit service charges. Thing to note here is that we're able to keep ourselves within target. There's no real advantage to going above. Operating fund also has a reserves policy. I was less clear how to represent this. In 2025, we forecast ourselves to have about $4 million in excess reserves. That's not as significant as it sounds. That's only about 10 days above the upper target of 210 days. But we are constructing the budget to be exactly on target for 2026. There's no real advantage of having excess there. Bottom line, same two messages. We have excess reserves, which will help us avoid bonding and limit service charges, and we are jumping into a high spending period that was very fast. We'll get more, as I said, on the 11th, trying to honor President Hubbell's desire to get us out of here. Questions welcome, though.
Anybody have any questions? Ken?
Bill, Commissioner Clark, who at the district prioritizes the capital projects, and at what rate? Who's responsible for what
Who
rate they're done?
prioritizes individual capital projects?
The whole, that whole plan.
Eric does. This plan is Eric's final decision. The process, briefly, is we have last year's capital project schedule, which is our starting point. We do some of the analysis that Todd described with input from every project engineer in the form of a business case, Lisa's input on the feasibility of schedule. We present Eric a proposal, and then we talk through it in detail with him. And he says, actually, I think that's more important. Let's push that back. We need to move that forward. And the final schedule is Eric's final decision. Responsive to your question?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Beth?
Yes, just a comment that the service charge rates are really great news, I think. The fact that we are not going 9-10% increase in service charges. We're actually at around 5% for this next year. And that, it looks like going forward also, we're keeping it under 9 or 10%. So I'm happy to see that and hope that, we continue to hold ourselves to that. So just the comment is, it's good news.
Okay. Seeing nobody else, we'll move on to Mary Powers and the Lab Services Program.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Mary Powers, and I'm the lab manager here at the district. Today, I'd like to give you a behind-the-scenes look at the important work our lab team does every day. I'll walk you through the scope of our testing, how we support the district's mission, and where we're headed as we plan for the future. The lab plays a vital role in fulfilling the district's mission to protect public health and the environment and our vision of enriching life through clean water and resource recovery. We do this by providing critical analytical data that supports a wide range of efforts from core permit compliance testing, like effluent monitoring and pollution minimization, to environmental and research-based projects like chloride monitoring, Yahara wind sample analysis, and collaborative research studies with both internal and external stakeholders. Our testing helps operations staff make real-time decisions to keep the plant running efficiently, and it supports service charge calculations for our owner communities. In short, nearly every part of the district relies on data that starts in the lab. At the heart of our work is a team of 6 full-time chemists, each specializing in a suite of tests. They bring a high level of expertise and are deeply committed to the district's goals. We also host up to 3 part-time team members, a lab intern, home well sampling intern, and a high school youth apprentice. Their contributions not only support our workload, but also help build the next generation of environmental scientists. Our lab is certified through 2 state programs, the Wisconsin DNR Lab Certification Program and DATCAP. These certifications are essential to the work we do. They require us to follow strict analytical methods and meet rigorous quality and reporting standards. We prove our technical competency through annual proficiency testing and regular audits, which review everything from training records to instrument maintenance logs. Now, you might be wondering, if we already know we're doing good work, why go through the hassle of being certified? It comes down to trust and compliance. The data we generate is reported monthly to the DNR as part of our permit obligations. For that data to be accepted and relied upon, it has to come from a certified lab. For that data to be accepted, certification proves our results are scientifically sound, defensible, and produced according to accepted methods. I would also like to take a moment to shamelessly plug the lab. We recently completed our most successful audit in recent history with only 1 finding. Now, I'd like to walk through the kinds of testing we perform, grouped by the type of technology used. First up is the solids lab, which helps us to monitor how well we're removing solids during treatment. The main tests included are total suspended solids, which measures how much particulate matter is suspended in the water. That is then broken down into fixed and volatile suspended solids, which shows how much of that is organic versus inorganic matter. We also measure total solids along with their volatile and fixed fractions in sludge samples as well. These results give insight into how solids are moving through the system, help us evaluate the performance of different treatment processes, including digestion and biosolids handling. One of the cornerstone tests in any wastewater lab is biochemical oxygen demand, or BOD. This test measures how much oxygen microorganisms use to break down organic matter in a sample over 5 days. We also run a more specific version called carbonaceous biochemical oxygen demand, which focuses on only carbon-based compounds and excludes the oxygen demand from nitrogenous material. These tests help us understand the strength of the wastewater and whether the treatment process is effectively removing organic pollution. BOD values are also directly tied to service charge calculations for our owner communities. Next is our automated chemistry lab, where we use autoanalyzers to measure key nutrients. These instruments work by mixing the sample with reagents, triggering a color change that's measured and converted into concentration values. We use this method to analyze a wide range of analytes, as you see here. These results help staff to track nutrient removal performance and stay within our permit limits. We also use chromatography, a powerful separation technique to analyze components that affect water quality. We operate an ion chromatograph to measure ions like chloride, nitrate, and sulfate, which are important for both regulatory and operational decisions, and a gas chromatograph to track volatile fatty acids, which are crucial for monitoring our anaerobic digesters. These tools give us high-resolution data and help guide process control and research. To monitor for metals, we use ICP-OES, a technology that uses plasma to excite atoms in a sample, allowing us to detect metals like copper, zinc, and lead, and also essential nutrients like potassium and sodium. When it comes to mercury, we use a specialized mercury analyzer. Mercury testing helps us meet permit limits and supports outreach efforts to reduce mercury in the sewer system. Microbiological testing ensures our treated water is safe to return to the environment. Currently, we test for fecal coliforms using a membrane filtration method. In our upcoming permit cycle, we expect a requirement to shift to E. coli, which is a more specific indicator of recent contamination. We'll also switch methods with this change in our permit to using the ColAlert system, which detects both coliforms and E. coli based on a color change and whether or not the sample fluoresces. The bottom right picture I have on the slide is a picture from IDEX, the company that created the ColAlert system, showing some fluorescing samples. We also run multiple tube fermentation for biosolids, which provides an estimate of bacterial density in those samples. So you may be wondering why I've spent so much time explaining these tests and what areas of the district these touch. That's because in 2024, the lab performed 63,241 analyses on 13,602 samples. I have included a table here to show how those numbers break down by type of test that was run. This is not a small amount of work by any means, and its impact to the district is critical. Here I have a map of the plant marked with specific sample locations. These data points help district staff make informed decisions to adjust process conditions, ensuring the plant is performing optimally to improve both treatment and cost efficiency. While I'm not the expert on the data we provide, what that specifically means for the plant, I do know that providing those that do know with as close to real-time data as possible helps keep us serving our owner communities and protecting health the best we can. Outside the plant, we test samples collected from our service area to calculate fair and accurate service charges for our owner communities, ensuring everyone pays their share based on actual loadings. The district's collection system services crew collects samples quarterly from 6 district pumping stations, 9 non-district pumping stations, and 54 other locations within the service area to make these calculations. Most of these sites are sampled for a week out of every quarter, while some of them can be sampled 2 or 3 weeks. Looking ahead, the lab is working to plan for the future. We have recently begun the first phase of a 3-phase initiative to modernize the lab. For this phase, we have chosen to work with Strang, an architectural firm located in Madison. They have pretty impressive lab design experience. No funding decisions are needed today, but we wanted to share that we are taking the initial steps to assess the current state of the lab. During this project, we will be evaluating safety, efficiency, and design improvements that can carry the lab into the future. The deliverables from this phase will be an assessment report containing a preliminary design and estimated cost for future phases, which will include final design and construction. In closing, the lab is a small but vital part of the district's operations. Our team is committed to excellence, and we're proud of the role we play in protecting public health and the environment. Thank you for your continued support and interest in our work. This time, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions? Beth?
I just have a comment. Back in the dark ages, when I started my career, after getting my bachelor's degree here at the district, I worked as a chemist in the lab, and I'm impressed that you have 6 chemists working in the lab now, doing all those samples. Back when I was working, we had 5 or 6 chemists doing probably maybe half of the analysis that you're doing today. So it just speaks to the efficiency, and I'm glad to see that, so thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just have one question. You know, you have a lot of equipment that measures. How often does that have to be calibrated or double-checked to make sure it's accurate?
It depends. It can depend. The instrument is calibrated with essentially every analysis that's run. So we'll have a batch of samples run all at once, but we'll calibrate it before that. And then preventative maintenance will happen as needed.
Greg?
I just wanted to say congratulations. I worked in the lab, while I was a grad student and went through audits. That's no small thing. It's a lot of work.
We're really hoping for 0, but
yeah.
1 is still great.
Hey, do you still use the BOD Auto Easy that a former lab director here?
That was actually retired
Okay.
in the summer of 2023, I believe that was.
Okay.
I'm looking at Todd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah, so
Greg.
I believe it was in the summer of 2023. It was soon after I started.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
That was, we got a patent with him, that was probably like 25, 28 years ago. Julie Moss, you're gonna give us a update on an industrial pretreatment?
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for the chance to tell you about the district's pretreatment program. I'm Julie Moss, and I'm the pretreatment program coordinator here at the district. And today I plan to give a broad overview of the work we do in our industrial wastewater permit program and the regulations that drive this program. I'll give a snapshot of where we are today and where we're going. Here at the district, the pretreatment program is housed in the Ecosystem Services Department and currently consists of 1 full-time employee, that's me, although there are quite a few colleagues in other departments who are also critical to this program's work. The primary focus of this work is industrial wastewater. The core responsibility of my job is to regulate industries that discharge wastewater to our treatment plant by administering a set of regulations that were enacted at the federal level under the Clean Water Act, as well as our sewer use ordinance. And we'll talk about both of those things in a bit. In my role, I get to work with people from all kinds of businesses, institutions, and other entities, as well as our customer communities on a regular basis. It's also worth noting that until very recently, my role was responsible for administering our hauled waste program in addition to our industrial pretreatment program. And some of you may recall that last year, the Commission approved the addition of a new full-time position to allow us to meet the needs of both of these programs. And our new hauled waste coordinator, Samantha Wills, started in June, and I believe she was introduced recently. I will let her tell you about the hauled waste program another time, but I wanted to mention that the addition of this new role will vastly improve our ability to move both of these programs forward. So this is a very exciting time. For this discussion, the definition of industrial wastewater includes any non-domestic wastewater. Domestic wastewater is typical of what we get from households such as restrooms or home kitchens. An industrial user is what we call any generator of non-domestic wastewater. An industrial user could be a business, like a manufacturing plant, a utility that generates electricity, or maybe a government entity such as a landfill. Industrial wastewater may be discharged to the collection system via a drain or a manhole, or it could be hauled to our plant in a truck and discharged to our septic receiving site. The wastewater could be a long-term discharge or a one-time event, and it could be generated inside or outside of the district service area. We have so many types of businesses, like business activities in the area, which means that there are all kinds of industrial wastewater coming to us. So let's set the scene by looking at some relationships and regulations that are in place for industrial wastewater. On the left side of this graphic is the wastewater treatment facility. That's us, the district. And then over on the right, labeled industry, is a source of industrial wastewater. In the middle is a customer community, which also plays an important role in industrial wastewater. For any industrial user in our service area, the customer community provides water to the industrial user and also owns and operates the sanitary sewer system in that community. An industrial's wastewater is discharged to the municipality system, and their water and sewer bills come directly from the municipality, not from the district. Now, if we follow the orange arrows at the bottom, wastewater from municipal systems eventually combines in the part of the collection system that is owned and operated by the district. And all of that wastewater eventually reaches our facility here and is treated. Now let's take a look at some regulatory relationships. The district is in the business of treating wastewater and returning the clean water or effluent to the environment. Wastewater treatment is regulated to make sure that the water we send to the environment is clean and safe. The wastewater regulations that apply to us originate at the federal level with the EPA. The Clean Water Act establishes the basic structure for regulating discharges of wastewater pollutants into the waters of the United States and regulating quality standards for surface waters. The Clean Water Act makes it unlawful to discharge any pollutant from a point source, like a pipe, into a navigable water unless a permit is obtained. EPA established a permit program to control those discharges in the U.S., and that program is named the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, which you may know by the acronym NPDES. Many states have their own environmental regulatory agencies. Here in Wisconsin, we have the DNR. State agencies can request to be able to administer some of the federal regulations within their state. The DNR has been authorized by EPA to administer the Clean Water Act regulations in Wisconsin. What that means is that the DNR regulates any discharger of pollutants to the environment under its own permits program, the Wisconsin Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, or WPDES. Now, all that is to say that the district's work is regulated by the Wisconsin DNR through a WPDES permit, which contains many requirements that we're subject to. One requirement is that the district has to meet numeric effluents for certain pollutants in our effluent. And with so many types of industrial users sending us wastewater, we do have a few ways to manage what's coming our way to make sure we don't receive anything harmful that could pass through our treatment plant undetected and end up in our effluent. And one thing we have in place to make sure we're able to keep meeting our permit limits is a sewer use ordinance that outlines what can and can't be discharged to the sanitary sewer. The district's sewer use ordinance applies to the entire collection system. Additionally, it's worth noting that our customer communities have their own ordinances for sanitary sewer users in their systems. Ordinances are meant to prevent harmful wastewater from being discharged and to protect infrastructure as well as human safety. And I mention this because industrial users likely have multiple sets of local ordinances to follow for their wastewater. It also means that the district's discussions about industrial wastewater often include our customer communities because they're also invested in what's happening at these facilities. Now, finally, in conjunction with our ordinances, the district has an industrial pretreatment permitting program for some industrial users, and that's really our focus for today. To tie this all together, the EPA has developed and implemented regulations that apply specifically to industrial wastewater. So let's take a look at this industrial user on the right. If this facility were located along a river, they may wish to discharge their wastewater directly to that river, as that arrow, the effluent arrow shows. In that case, the wastewater would need to be regulated under a permit. And in some states, the EPA would issue an NPDES permit directly to that industry. In Wisconsin, because DNR has delegated authority to administer the Federal Clean Water Act, in this case, DNR would issue a WPDES permit to the facility, just like DNR has issued a permit to our treatment facility here at the plant. But what happens when the industry discharges to a sanitary system rather than directly to a receiving water? The federal regulations for industrial wastewater still apply, and the DNR could issue a WPDES permit to this industry. However, the wastewater is coming to our plant, and DNR is not nearly as familiar with our plant's operation and capabilities as we are. And because of this, EPA and DNR allow wastewater treatment plants to request regulatory authority to administer these federal and state regulations on their behalf, and these regulations are known as the Industrial Pretreatment Program. And DNR did delegate that authority to the district years ago. The WPDES permit that the DNR has issued to the district requires us to administer an industrial pretreatment program in accordance with those regulations. And that's the responsibility of our pretreatment program. So what that means is that we are issuing, administering, and enforcing industrial wastewater permits that are essentially functionally the equivalent of WPDES permits that DNR issues to its permittees. And as a quick note, most of our industrial wastewater comes to us through pipes, through the system, but I'll just mention for anyone wondering that these regulations apply to any industrial user of our system, including those that send their wastewater to us in a truck as hauled waste, whether the wastewater is generated inside or outside of our service area. So all of this brings us to the main point, which is that the district has to regulate industries. So what does that entail? Let's talk about those federal regulations. EPA and DNR require us to have a number of key components in place as part of our industrial pretreatment program. I won't read these to you, but we are going to talk about these 6 items. Any wastewater plant, which is also often referred to as a publicly owned treatment works or POTW, that administers its own pretreatment program is required to develop and maintain what's called a pretreatment program manual, which outlines how the POTW will administer its program to meet all of the requirements in EPA's general regulations. This document must be approved by our regulatory agency. In our case, it's the DNR, so that we can obtain authority to administer this program. The manual details all aspects of our program, such as how it will be staffed and funded and enforced. And our pretreatment program manual was submitted to DNR way back in 1984. And this is, as far as we can tell, still the most recent version of this manual. And because it exists, it's valid, and we've met that requirement. But it really does need to be updated. So that's something that we have on our list of projects that we'll be able to tackle in the not too distant future. We're also required to develop and follow a formal enforcement response plan that details what steps the district will take in response to violations that occur under our pretreatment program. The federal regulations are prescriptive in many ways, but they were also written to allow some flexibility for POTWs to administer their programs in ways that make sense for them. So this is a page from our enforcement response plan. Different types of violations that may occur are listed individually, along with levels of severity within each violation type. The enforcement actions we can take, as well as the personnel involved, are also identified. Our enforcement response plan must be approved by DNR, and our current plan was last updated and approved in 1991. We still follow this plan, and it has served us well, but this is also due for a review and update. And again, now that we have our hauled waste coordinator and my attention can be focused on the pretreatment program, I'm looking forward to getting this up to date as well. In order for us to regulate our industries effectively, we have to know who they are. And what we'll talk about in the As we'll talk about in the next slide, we have a formal permit program for certain industrial users. And we are required to identify and locate all industrial users that could possibly be subject to our permitting program. We have to be able to demonstrate to DNR that we have permitted all industries that we are required to. And as part of that, we're expected to be able to explain why any industrial user of our system is or is not permitted. This is fundamental not only for making our regulators happy, but the district benefits from knowing what types of wastewater we're receiving and where it's coming from as well. It also is good for us to maintain relationships with our industries so we can better plan for their business expansion and any pollutant loadings or volume changes that we receive. It also helps us identify program priorities in a strategic way. This is another area that has substantial opportunity for improvement at the district. We are in a region that's very appealing to businesses, and there are a lot of different businesses around here. It's been a challenge to keep up with industries as they arrive and grow and change, but we're moving in the right direction on that front. And in my time here at the district, the industrial user inventory has been updated largely in a reactive way. I do hear from industrial facilities pretty regularly. They reach out proactively to ask about permitting requirements, and they want to make sure they are in compliance. But admittedly, these are the facilities that have largely been my focus, and some have been identified as future permittees. Some don't need permits, but it's good for us to be aware of them and keep them on our radar for future growth or partnership opportunities. There are many industrial users that are not yet accounted for in our program. But the good news is, again, now that we have our new colleague, I get to put the wheels in motion to proactively build our user inventory by taking several steps. And those steps will include sending out questionnaires and really proactively contacting industries and working with our customer communities and their public works departments as they are connecting new businesses to really get that information and have a better sense of who's out there. By keeping our user inventory up to date, we'll be able to confidently identify those facilities that require a permit, which is the heart and soul of our pretreatment program. So let's talk about those permits. As I mentioned, the district is required to issue a formal industrial wastewater permit to certain facilities. Any facility that has been permitted under our program has been identified by the district as a significant industrial user, which we shorten to SIU. There is a regulatory definition of SIU, and if a facility's wastewater meets at least one of these 4 criteria, we're required to evaluate that facility to determine whether a permit is needed. A categorical industrial user is permitted because of the type or types of processes that are at that facility. And we'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. If a facility is discharging high volumes of processed wastewater, or if their wastewater is considered high strength, we'll evaluate that facility. We also have a catch-all for facilities that don't meet the other criteria, but that have reasonable potential for sending us wastewater that could potentially cause harm. Like I mentioned, we do issue permits to all facilities that meet the definition of categorical industrial user. These categories that are listed on the slide are defined by EPA. If a facility has even one process that meets EPA's definition of one of these categorical activities, that facility will be issued a permit, even if they don't discharge any categorical water to the sanitary sewer. We have to account for that wastewater, and we do that through a permit. On this slide, some boxes have been highlighted in blue. Those show that the district has issued categorical permits to all of those industry types that are highlighted here. We currently have 19 facilities that are permitted, and 8 more SIUs have been identified that we plan to permit. This slide and the next list our current permittees. I won't go through them. In the interest of time, I just included them so you can see what types of businesses we work with. And then I have listed here those facilities that have been identified as needing permits, so we will be permitting these facilities as well. We'll walk through very quickly the permit issuance process. Once a facility has been identified as an SIU, the application process begins. The facility will complete our standard application form. We ask for lots and lots of information about the business, about the operations, especially the wastewater, of course. We might need some preliminary analytical data. I write the permits, but that's a collaborative process with the industry, and quite a few of my colleagues are often involved in that as well. We do want to make sure that our wastewater permits are protective of our system and meet the district's regulatory requirements, but we do aim to be reasonable and work with our permittees through their concerns along the way. And permits are issued for 5-year terms. Each permit includes certain standard items, and we'll just go through those quickly today. Each permit contains 2 sets of pollutant limits that the facility's wastewater must be in compliance with at all times. We have local limits, and that is a list of pollutants that the district has established to ensure that we are able to meet our permit effluent limits. And there are also categorical limits, and those are established by EPA for those industrial categories that we looked at earlier. And how do we know that a facility's wastewater is in compliance with their limits? Through monitoring. Each permit contains monitoring requirements for any pollutant limits that apply, and sometimes we monitor for pollutants that don't have limits, but that we want to stay aware of. It's helpful for us to know. The facility is required to conduct its own sampling and monitoring 2 times each year, and the district also collects samples and performs analysis of each facility 2 times per year. And the district's collection system services team goes out and collects the physical samples. As Mary mentioned, our laboratory is able to analyze quite a few of the samples that we collect from industries. And for those pollutants that our lab does not run in-house, we contract with a laboratory to do those. In addition to sampling, everyone with a permit is required to submit compliance reports to the district 2 times per year. The requirement is to submit the results of the self-monitoring to show whether their wastewater is meeting their permit limits, also to tell us about their wastewater flows, and if a facility ships out any of their processed wastewater with a contract waste firm, which is what some facilities do, they're also required to report what waste was shipped and where it was sent. In the interest of time, we won't go through all of the other standard permit requirements, but we do have quite a few different things that are included in every permit. Also, I'll mention that I'm required to visit each permitted facility at least one time per year for a site inspection. Those are scheduled in advance, and the purpose is to check in with the facility, sit down and talk about how any compliance issues, any updates, anything that's changing at the facility, and also to conduct a site walkthrough to get eyes on those permitted processes, their sampling methods, as well as look at chemical storage areas and just any potential for unintended discharges. The last thing I want to cover calls back to something I mentioned earlier, which is permit violations and enforcement. One of the requirements that we are subject to is that the district must take certain steps if a permittee does not meet a compliance requirement in their permit. Our regulators at the DNR require this of us. If a permittee experiences an exceedance of a pollutant limit or an accidental discharge of a chemical or other potentially harmful condition, we want to hear about it so we can try to mitigate any hazards, and we want to work with the facility to understand what happened and how it can be prevented in the future. We do try to work with facilities in a collaborative way to document and resolve any issues like that. Now, the district does not usually take a heavy-handed approach with enforcement, but we sometimes do have to follow up in a formal way if a permittee is out of compliance. This could be a late compliance report or a violation of a pollutant limit. The district's response could be a notice of noncompliance, a letter, a phone call, or other communication, depending on the nature of the violation. And we take appropriate steps as outlined in our enforcement response plan that I mentioned earlier. And I should mention, if a facility is in significant noncompliance, we are required to publish a legal notice in the newspaper. This is rare, and we try to avoid those significant noncompliance situations by working with our permittees and supporting them in their compliance efforts. As a final note, I'll mention how the district is held accountable by our regulator, the Wisconsin DNR. Just like all of our permittees submit compliance reports to the district submits compliance reports to the DNR to let them know how our industrial pretreatment program is doing and whether we're meeting our own compliance requirements. Our pretreatment program is also audited by DNR on a periodic basis, typically twice during a 5-year permit term. They last visited in 2023, so we will probably hear from them again in a year or two. And that is the end of my presentation. I thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions? Greg?
Not really a question, just an offer. We went through and updated our restaurant class some years ago, probably 6 or 7 at this point, for some of the reasons you stated, meaning you have a list of people you're regulating, but there's a whole list of people you're not regulating, right? And so the same was true for City of Madison for our restaurant classes, for us, for strength sampling, additional strength. What might be useful is an offer from us. We can run queries on our database to identify some of the SIC codes that you have to regulate. I would imagine other communities can as well. So just an offer, really.
I appreciate that. We will put that on the list of things to look into. Thank you.
Okay. No others? Thank you. That will take us to the Executive Director update. Eric?
Yep, so I'm going to turn it over to Amanda to talk about 2 upcoming events.
Good morning, Amanda Wagner, Communications and Public Affairs Director here at the district. So first, we have on Tuesday, August 12th, we have a solar open house. We are, as Eric announced last commission meeting, we are partnering with MG&E and looking at installing solar on the lovely cornfield that is just out this portion of that cornfield that is just out that window. And part of our community engagement, we, along with MG&E, are having an open house. We have sent notification to all of the, to neighbors within a nearby radius and inviting them here to come learn more about the district, about the project, and just come to engage with us in general. The following day, we have our 2026 budget community preview meeting. I usually mix up the order of those words, but bringing the community in, and commissioners are invited to attend as well. So it's a similar format to last year, where it includes lunch right here in this room, and we will have some similar presentations to what you heard today from Todd, an extended presentation from Bill. And then Eric will give an update to the customer communities as well. Commissioners are invited to attend. I know 2 of you have registered already. I'll be sending out another reminder. There is a virtual option if you would like to attend virtually. If you're here in person, get lunch. Let me know if you have any questions about those.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Eric? Todd, second quarter sewer service charges, anything you have to say? Okay. Okay, so they're in the packet that's following the more recent, that we don't approve those anymore because it's basically part of the budget. Ezra, any report on the Performance Review Committee?
Yeah, I can offer a couple quick updates. You can hear me okay, yeah? Good.
Yes, we can hear you.
With the 6 month performance review of Eric and the executive director role behind us after last commission meeting, the subcommittee is going to turn to picking up a little bit where we left off there and working with Eric on performance goals for the year ahead. We'll bring those back to the commission at some point, I think, and decide at the commission level, I think, ultimately, but maybe we'll have some ideas at the subcommittee level, where what to do with those. In the past, we have baked annual performance goals for the ED into the budget. So we'll work with Eric a bit on that and come back with something for the whole commission soon, I think, next couple of months, I'd say. And then the second thing is, I've mentioned before, we put out an RFP earlier this summer for looking for a consultant to help us to define the annual exec director performance review process going forward. We're sort of following our past process now that's in policy, but we're exploring new ways to do it, make it as valuable but also efficient as it can possibly be, and think about whether to involve a consultant in an ongoing way or to have commission lead it. All those kinds of issues will be part of that process. So right now, the way we ended up setting this up is that just I and then staff are going to review the proposals that are coming in and pick a winning qualified bidder on that work. So we'll that'll come back to the subcommittee at some point once we're done at the staff level and with my involvement, and then we'll bring it back to the whole commission, I think, for approval, probably at least of sort of the cost side of that bid or whatever, and then that work will play out over the next months.
Okay, thank you, Ezra. Anybody have any questions? Nope. And Greg, any finance committee report?
Nothing specific. We had to cancel our last meeting for staffing.
Okay. Then that will take us to Alan, operations report.
Good morning, Commissioners. Alan Grooms, I'm the operations manager here at the district. I'll be giving you the July operations report, or correction, June. You back me up one there. There we go. Sorry, I pushed a button and it advanced it. So, short report, or can be. There's no questions. It's the normal dashboard metrics. Boring is pretty good. We usually sometimes this time of year start to see some excursions of solids, and the phosphorus then goes with the solids with a little bit of denitrification that goes on in our clarifiers as we get to warmer summer temperatures and better nitrification. It's got more nitrate for food for the denitrifiers, and tends to result in more popping sludge. And fortunately, this summer with a little bit more rain, a little bit maybe cooler temperatures, we really haven't seen a lot of that this year. So the plant performance has been very good year to date. Spoiler alert, it's continued good through July. So August report, Matt Seib will be given that in my absence, and I'm assuming he'll have very good numbers to report as well. So any questions on on this one? I have nothing really noteworthy to point out. The numbers are pretty consistent to the low end of historical.
Well, and only you would say the temperatures we had in July this past week were cool.
Well, I said
I know you're giving the June, but you're talking about how it's not.
I actually was in Canada during the really hot spell, so it was actually fairly mild where I was at. So I managed to time the vacation fairly well. So for periodic updates we do on overall performance, clean water numbers at the 50% part through the year. We're kind of right on track with a fairly normal year. Even with the rain we've had recently, our influent numbers have not really come up too much. A little closer to what longer term, I think a lot of us that have been around a while are used to saying we're 40 MGD or 42 MGD, and I think we're coming back closer to that longer term average. The last few years have been a little bit lower than that. So, but very, very normal numbers. We really haven't had excessive flows year to date so far. Biogas, we're right on track for where we would normally be, 162.5 million cubic feet. And reused effluent, that's our W4 that we use for plant processes for disinfected and used in the plant. That's also right on track with what our normal use would be. So, any questions on this metric or graph? Great. Moving on to the other portion of this, which deals more with the solids outputs. The MetroGo cake, we made some cake product earlier in this year. We do that periodically when everything is in a good state there to do that. It gives us a little bit more margin on storage in the spring haul out, and it also provides a different product, a Class A cake product that we can use then for, there are some farmers that will take that, and we can apply that Class A in areas where the Class B liquid can't go. So that number, though, we haven't made any more this year, probably won't make any more this year, barring circumstances I can't foresee. MetroGo product, we're right on track with normal production numbers. That's our Class B liquid. That's what we're sending to the storage tanks. That doesn't reflect what's going out to the fields. That value is in the spreadsheet report that's in the packet if you're interested in those specific numbers. Struvite numbers, we're on track here for a little bit of a higher, on the 3-year average, a little bit higher year if this pace continues. Although we do have some upgrades we're hoping to do late in the year that may require us to shut down the system for a week or two in order to do some controls upgrades. That could creep into 2026, so we don't know what that'll do precisely on that, but we look like production's in line or a little bit higher than typical for that. And biosolid storage at the end of June was 60.1% capacity. We have had some wheat fields opening up, so some of those we've already hauled out some storage. I think we're currently good to about the end of September, so we're in really good shape for this point of the summer. If it dries out here a little bit, I know they've got some other fields to apply to, so no concerns there. Well, at least from my part. So, any questions from the commission on this slide or any other slides presented? All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Alan. Okay, Vanessa, anything happening?
Lots happening. Good morning, Commissioners. Vanessa Wishart, Legal Counsel for the district. I'll do a kind of a general overview of legal work we've done over the last month, but I want to highlight 2 items that I know the Commission wanted an update on. The first are the condemnation proceedings. The litigation team at Stafford is taking the lead on that, but I got an update from them. So just for some background, there's 2 property owners who challenged the district's easements. And then for each of those 2 property owners, there's 2 proceedings for each of the cases. So one is a condemnation proceeding. That the basis of that is property owners challenging the amount of the award that the district provided for the easement. And then there's a right to take action, which is similar but slightly different. The property owners in those cases are arguing that the land that is left over after the district takes its easement is what's called an uneconomic remnant, so the district needed to provide additional compensation for that. So again, 2 property owners, 2 proceedings for each. Where we're at with those proceedings, for the condemnation proceedings for both property owners, there was, those went in front of first a compensation commission. Both property owners have appealed the compensation commission's award to circuit court. So those are pending actions in circuit court. For the right to take action, 1 property owner filed an amended complaint recently that the district answered, and then the parties are working through some discovery on that case. And then the other property owner has until mid-December, just as a legal function, to amend their complaint if they want to do that. The district would then need to answer, and then similarly, we would be working through discovery. The other update the commission asked for was on the Badger Mill Creek litigation for the water quality plan amendment. So the city of Verona did file an appeal yesterday, actually, of the circuit court's decision in favor of DNR. There's a statutory process in place for briefing for that case. So they have officially filed the notice of appeal. Once the record gets sent over to the Court of Appeals, then there's a briefing schedule that just follows from that based on statutes. So the the city would have 40 days to file an initial brief. Then the DNR and the district would have 30 days from the filing of the initial brief to file response briefs, and then the city would have 15 days to file their reply. I'll pause and see if there's questions on those two topics, and then just give an additional update on legal work. Yes, and so DNR also responded to, if you recall, the district submitted some additional modeling in accordance with the condition in the water quality plan amendment request. DNR sent the district a letter with positive review of that modeling. We just sent the DNR another letter requesting some clarification on whether that letter provides that all of the conditions of the approval are met, and so we would have an unconditioned approval. So we're waiting on a response to DNR. The letter was a little unclear on, specifically whether the conditions have been fulfilled. That letter went out to DNR yesterday, so we're just waiting on a response from them. Other work that we've been doing for the district this month, we're continuing to work on legal review for the Moreland Road property acquisition, continuing legal review on the ERP project, and then continuing work on updates to the sewer use ordinance as well. Any questions from anyone?
Thank you. And that takes us to future meeting schedule. That's in the packet. So pretty soon we're going to be starting the budget process. Future agenda topics, other business. Ken?
Motion to adjourn, Commissioner Clark.
Motion by Commissioner Clark to adjourn, second by
Commissioner Freeze?
Second by Commissioner Freeze. All those in favor say aye.
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 And opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Have a good afternoon and rest of the morning.
Take care, everyone.